Greetings, welcome back to PinkOddBird. Today it's cover day. We're going to be working on our cover. So as you remember, we're working on this winter book here. I'm using the Winter Dreams kit, and we have already put the signatures together. We have put some ephemera together for the pages of the signatures. And so now it's time to start working on the cover. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so I'm gonna set the signatures aside for a second and grab my chipboard. And my pages, I know that they are 8.5 by 5.5. You can double check that though before you cut your chipboard down. So yeah, just about 8.5. And yep, 5.5. So I do want to say that sometimes it depends on the size of chipboard that I have, but I have and still do make my covers 9 by 6 if you want that extra lip around the book cover. But I don't have any qualms with making my book the actual 8.5 by 5.5 size. I haven't had any issues with that. I will say that you do have to be like a little bit more precise, because however you put your signatures in and however you do your punching the holes for sewing in the signatures, it has to be really on point, because if you have it the same height, you could easily go over or under. And unless you want that look, you got to be really precise. If you don't really want to worry about that, then you can cut these pages these sheets to 9 by 6. And then you're going to have that lip all the way around your book. For this particular one, I am not too worried about that. The other thing about that is you will end up having lots of these little strips like this if you're using 8.5 by 11, but you know, it's a give and take here. So I'm just going to do mine at 5.5. So I've got my 2 pieces here. And then I also, like I said, have a bunch of these like little cutoff pieces from previous ones where I have cut the sheets down to 9 instead of 8.5. So I would like to try and use these as much as I can before I cut a whole fresh sheet, because we're trying to not make extra scraps. So I know that these 2 are already too skinny for what I would be doing with this book. So I'm going to put those away. And then I'm going to hang on to these for a second as potential users of the spine board. So what I'm going to do is I have my text block. It's not really a text block yet. It's still signatures, but and so what I like to do is, you see how it's kind of like this, because all of the stuff that I've added in onto the edges here. What I like to do is I like to hold it so that it's even, just like this. So you can see now it's nice and even, like a rectangle instead of like a V. So I hold it nice and even, or you can do this when it's all laying down. You could just press down on this side until the pages actually are aligned in a like rectangular shape. And then I take my ruler. Personally, I like to leave a little bit of extra wiggle room in the signature for the book to be able to still grow. You can see here. Well, when I hold them this way, it's about 2 1/4. So I think, let's see, we could do a 3-inch spine. That's going to give it pretty good space. Why don't we do 3 inches? We'll do a 3-inch spine. So let's see, this scrap here, it's 2.5. I'm sorry, it's 2 3/4. So I'm actually going to use this piece. It just saves me time from having to cut this down. So now let's start putting these all together. All right, next, I am fresh out of my fresh Tyvek that I have purchased. However, I do save Tyvek that comes to me in the mail. You can use this because, as you can see, it's already been mailed to me. It's already been shipped to me. It's, you know, not a brand new supply that I have taken. This is me reusing an item that was already used and paid for. So if you don't have fresh Tyvek, save old Tyvek mailers like this, and you can use this stuff to keep your journal intact. So what I'm going to do is upcycling what would naturally be trash at this point, which is kind of like the point of junk journals, right? This is where what I'm making isn't a junk journal technically, it's just a journal, but this is part of what, you know, upcycling and reusing materials is all about. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut myself a little bit here off the edge. Okay. And I'm going to cut it down so that it'll open up. All right, and then I really don't need that. Okay, I'm going to cut this little excess tape off the edge here. And then I'm going to cut this in half. If you wanted to, you could just use one piece straight across, but that's not the way that I do it. All right, none of this has to be really perfect either because I'm just going to be using glue. So what I like to do is, oh, I need to cut this down a little bit. You want to make sure that your spine is the same height as your chipboard. That's a pretty big, that's a pretty important step. Sorry. I've done these tutorials before. I don't do them quite often. Usually when I do this, I'm not talking and I'm just, you know, kind of silently working through my process in my head. So it's a little bit different when I'm trying to explain it, but yeah. So here we go. All right, so now that my spine and my cover are the same height, I'm going to take a little bit of glue here, and I'm going to take a little bit of glue on the edge here. And I know you guys are probably like, oh, that looks so ratty, but you know what? It's something that's going to get thrown away anyway, and it's a supply that I can use, so, and no one's going to see it, so I mean, it's not a big deal. Okay. It's going to do its job. It's got a purpose and it's going to serve it. All right. So next I flip it over. So the piece that we just glued down is here, flipping it over, and I'm just going to glue over here on this edge. And then along the outer edge of this part of the spine. I like to use my ruler to make sure everything is nice and straight, and placing it down. And you do want to make sure that you leave space here for the book to be able to open and close, okay? All right, so now I'm just going to burnish this down to make sure it's all nice and intact. Okay, repeat the process for this side as well. there we have it. So the next thing that I like to do is take a piece of cardstock. It doesn't have to be cardstock. It can just be plain paper if that's all you got. It could also just be a scrap of something, maybe misprints. This is a good time to use those. And then I'm just going to run some glue all the way across this whole back area here. And then to make sure the sides stay down, I like to do a little glue on the outer edge of this. So place my paper down and then just try and make sure you leave enough of this at the top and the bottom to fold the edges over. All right. And there we go. Okay. Next, we want to bend these pieces over. Okay, and then, you guessed it, we are going to glue those flaps down. Okay, so now that everything is nicely pressed in, just give it a fold. All right, so here's what we've got. All right, so the base of the cover is pretty much prepared. So next, you want to take your fabric, and I'm going to use this one because the colors really kind of just match what's already in the book. And I just want to make sure that before I decide ultimately on this piece, I have enough to fold here, 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 and then I'll cut over here to where I have enough as well. So this piece of fabric is perfection. So boom. The next thing that we're going to do obviously is glue our cover down. For this, I'm going to go with my Fabri-Tac, which is my preferred fabric glue, and just make sure that I start putting glue in all the pertinent areas. So here we go. So when this starts happening, I just put this on there and I'll smooth it out with my finger before I press it down. You definitely make sure you don't want to do globs of glue, because now that's something that's going to seep through your fabric, especially if you don't back it with a liner, which sometimes I do have to do that. If the fabric is really see-through and I want to use it, I have to back it with a liner. In those cases, glue won't seep through, but if you're not backing it, then you do run the risk of the glue seeping through. So next we're going to cut the corners, and you want to make sure that you leave, you know, at least about that much or so, about a 1/4 of an inch from where you're cutting your corners. If you do a little bit more, that's okay. It's not the end of the world. If you do a little bit less, it might be the end of the world. Okay, there we go. Now we are going to start gluing all of these flaps down. There we go. And once you start making these a lot, they'll come to you like second nature. I think we're right now at about like 23 minutes before my editing, since I started this video, and that includes my talking at the beginning. But yeah, these are really, really easy and fun to make. All right, so next, side flaps. And then you want to make sure that you tuck in those little edges that we've left. So just tuck them in, tuck them in. And then we're going to fold over. There we go. Okay. If you have a little bit of extra fabric here, for me, I do like to try and glue that down too. Okay. And we are going to repeat the same thing on this side. Okay, so here's our cover, nice and ready to go. So at this point, what I like to do is just take a little look at it. Oh yeah, perfect, and room to grow. Awesome. Now I'm going to set this aside to let this dry for a little bit while we work on our... So also you want to remember how wide your spine is, because we're getting ready to build the template for our sewing in of the signatures. So I'm going to set this aside and start working on my template. So while the cover is off to the side drying for a bit, I have some templates here that I've already saved. I want to see if I have anything that matches what I'm currently working on, because that's just going to save me a little bit of time. And I do sometimes try and write the size of the template on there, but you can also just easily look and see what it is. So I want to see if I have one that's 8.5 inches tall with 5 signatures. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4. Nope, just kidding. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Ah, here's one. So now that's a potential. And that one's probably trash. Okay, and that spine I can already see is too big. Okay, so let's see if this one here works. If not, no problem. I'll do another one. And I won't really do like a full tutorial on that. I can show myself doing it, but I think there's already been a fantastic tutorial done on it, and it's where I learned it from, and it's what I use. And that is Lizel from Did Somebody Say Paper. So I will link her tutorial, the one that I used, where I learned it from, in the description box down below. So let's see. We have, oh my gosh, 2 3/4 by 8 1/2. Woohoo! Okay, so I won't be recording the process because I already have a template that works for me. So this is the template that I'm going to use. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 signatures just like I need, and it's the right width for my spine and the right height for my book. So I'm just going to take that and double check that everything is on the up and up, and it looks like we're good. Okay, so perfect. So the next thing is, so I've grabbed my usual supplies for the next step, which is my my waxed cording, my needle, binder clip, and my awl. So those are my supplies. So I think there's a chance that I still might be adding a little bit more to this book as far as like images and stuff goes. I don't have any more. I can still do that because number one, I know that I have left enough space in the book, the cover that we just built. And then I also don't have any more sewing that I need to do in this book. So I can go ahead and at least get the book bound together. So that's what I'm going to do. And then I'll make any other decisions and things like that that I have as I go. So at this point, I'm just going to organize my signatures in the way that I want them to appear once the book is in its final state. So now my signatures are organized how I want them to appear in the book. So this is the way they're going to be once the book is in its final state. So I'm going to set these aside just for a second, and then I'm going to take a fresh piece of cardstock here, and I'm going to cut it down to, so I already know that this is 8 1/2, right? So I want to cut this down to about 6. And I'm going to cut a sliver of it off. And I want to make sure that it's not going over the top and the bottom of the page or the cover. So this is perfect. So now that I have this, I'm going to take my same fabric, and I just want to glue this fabric onto this piece of cardstock here. This is optional. You don't have to do fabric on this piece. You can just leave it as plain cardstock if you want to. That's totally okay, or scrapbook paper if you want to use scrapbook paper. But in this case, I think I want it to be the fabric here. So that's what I'm doing. And there we go. Okay, so we know we have this piece now that's about 6 inches across, and it's going to be just shy of whatever the height of your book is. So what I'm going to do is take this over to my machine and give it a stitch, and then I'll come back and clean up the edges. So I'll be right back. Okie dokie. So now that we have this all done, I'm just going to clean up the edges. And at this point, you have a couple decisions on what you want to do as far as your binding. Now you can do it to where the binding, when you sew your signatures in, the binding will go through the spine of the book, or you can do it to where it's hidden, which in that case we would sew the signatures into this first and then glue the whole thing into the book just like that. So it's hidden signature. So you have to make that decision based on, I guess, whatever kind of book it is that you want to make, if you're, you know, making one of these yourself. And that's your choice. I'm going to do mine as where the signature is sewn into this. So I need my template here, and I also need my awl. So what I'm going to do is just find the center point of this piece right here, and I'm just going to line this up. I want to make sure that I have this pretty well in the center long ways also, and I believe where I marked it is just about the center, so that's perfect. So I'm going to mark it off here. I have all my holes punched through now. I will say, before you remove your template, you probably want to make sure that all of your holes you didn't miss any, because it's kind of hard to, you know, go back and try and align everything again. So now here is my little template. Now it's time to start putting the signatures into the book. So I like to grab my thread first. And you need at least like 2 times the length of your book. So just like that. And I'm just gonna cut it off. I like to have my needle ready, because after I poke the holes through the signature, I want to just be able to start sewing them in right away. So setting that off to the side. And then I have my signatures over here, how I want them to go into the book. So what you want to do is, well, the way that I do it is I start from the back. So I'm going to take whatever the last signature is, and that's going to be the first signature that I sew in. So I like to leave these upside down from now on, so that way I can just peel them off the top and into the book as I go. So before I get these sewn in, I like to flip through just to make sure everything is cool beans and it looks good. So I'm just going to make sure that the pages are lined up at the top and the bottom. Nothing is out of whack there. Put my clip on. I'm going to take my same template and get the holes poked through. If you're doing this and you have your own method of doing it, do it your way, but whatever way you're doing it, be careful, because the awl is a sharp tool. When you do your template, it's nice to write the word top up at the top, so that you know that the holes are going to be aligned in the same direction for each signature as you go. So I'm going to put my needle through the center hole here. This is just going to be a regular 5-hole pamphlet stitch. I'm going to take my template here, and so this is the way it's going to go into the book. So we want to start with the furthest hole over here, which is going to be this one. So once you turn it over, it's the far left. So here we go. Okay. So I think you guys get the gist of this. If you don't know how to do the stitch that you want to do for your book, I can link my tutorial or whatever tutorial. If I don't have one, I'll link another tutorial. I think I do actually have a tutorial for the 5-hole pamphlet stitch. So I can link that below, but just for the sake of time right now, I'm just going to get these sewn in, and then we can go ahead and move on to the next step. Especially because this part is really redundant, and I don't think you need to see me do the same thing 4 more times. Okay, we're back for the last signature, which is technically the first signature. Because, you know, it's always that sweet moment of like victory, triumph, completion when you actually get to that last signature that you have to sew in. Ah, sweet victory. So we're making pretty good pace here. It's not a race though. Take your time. I've just done so many books. I could probably do this in my sleep if I wanted to. Okay. Okay, we're moving right along. And I know that there, like I said, I do believe I still will do more in this book. There is definitely an opening for me to still be able to do that. However, there is still a moderate amount of work that's already been done in this book. I mean, you have to think about all of the time that we have taken already. So that's not to be discounted. You know, there's still a lot of work that has gone into this book. There are books that you can take even higher, more embellishments, more, you know, a lot more that you can do. It just depends on the kind and the style of book that you're wanting to make, what your intended purpose for it is. Like this one is kind of like, I would say for me, it's kind of like a medium. It's like got some embellishments, it's got some decoration, it's got plenty of writing space, and it also has free space for pockets and tuck spots for you to, you know, add your own stuff in. It's not a completely plain or bare journal, but it's also not overly embellished or hyper embellished, or, you know, it's not that kind of book, which I absolutely love, for the record. I think you guys know that. Okay, so we're ready to, here it is. Our signatures are all sewn in, and because we use the same template, everything is nice and even at the top and the bottom, and we're ready to just glue this into our book cover. So I'm going to bring that right over here, and I want to make sure everything looks good. Okay. So I know that this is another piece where you kind of have to like pay attention to what you're doing. So we know that our little piece here is 6 inches, right? So what I like to do to make sure that I get my signature thingy in the center is, I'm the center of the spine, so I know it's got to be about 1 and let's see, 1. So I need to move it this way a little. One and a quarter, 1 and a quarter. So we need to move it just like that. Okay, right about there. That's my center. So from there I want to do 3 inches, 1, 2, 3, and then I'll make a little line just kind of outside of the 3, like 3 1/8, 1, 2, 3 1/8, and then draw a little line here. It doesn't have to be perfect. This is just a guide so that you know when you're putting this in, it's going to be even. So you can use those little lines as a guide. So you can see I did go outside of the 3 inches on purpose so that I could just at least know where my center is. Okay, and then of course you want to make sure it's centered at the top and the bottom. Okay, now make sure if you're using Fabri-Tac you do have a ventilated area because this is a kind of strong glue. So you want to make sure that you're in a ventilated area, and then you just want to make sure you get all of your glue everywhere. So now that we've got the glue there, you want to make sure that your fabric, if your fabric is directional for your cover, you want to make sure that you have it the right direction before you put this down. And we are going to place just like so. And then I like to make sure that I get this down into the corners here, or the little gussets. And because you use glue, you have a little bit of a grace period. So you have a slight second chance to get it centered if you didn't get it centered the first time. And then I like to move each signature and then just press in between each one. Okay, and then again, I want to make sure that this is going to hold really nicely, so just running back over it with my bone folder. And then I want to start getting these sides folded up slowly, slowly. And you just want to keep making sure that everything stays glued down. Okay, and then we'll get this side up here. Just take your time with this, because like I said, you want to make sure it's all glued down. So you can see in here, everything is nicely glued down, centered. And here, everything is nicely glued down. You want to make sure that none of these have bumped up when you closed it, okay? So it looks good to me. I'm going to let this sit for a little bit. I'm going to have some lunch, and then I'll come back and we can finish up the cover. So see you soon. All right, who's ready to see if the book is set? I'm ready to see. Let's go ahead and take a look. Okay, so yep, everything stayed nicely in place while I had my lunch. So let's go ahead and open it. Ooh, nice. Nice. Okay, so the next thing that we're gonna do is we need to get something on these inside covers. So I'm just gonna refer back to the old scrapbook pad. Let me sit down here and pick some papers. I think this one. So we know that they go 5.5. The cover is 5.5. So I'm gonna just do about. I'm gonna start with. You can measure this. Let me show you guys the right way. So let's see. 5.5. So if we do 5.25. I think I'm gonna do 5 inches. That gives me a little bit of space so that the page isn't too close to the crease. So 5 inches, and then we know the book height. We know the book height is 8.5. So let's go ahead and cut our page down just shy of whatever the height of your book is, because you don't want it to overrun the edges. And you can always cut it down a little bit more if you don't cut enough, but if you cut it too short, it might be the end of the world. Okay, so here we go, 5 inches and 5 inches. So let's take a look and see how that looks. Okay. And I think that is perfection. Okay, so we're gonna glue these down. For me, I think I wanna just do a stitch around this just because that's what I wanna do, so I'll be right back. Okay, let's go ahead and get these into the book. I am going to once again use my Fabri-Tac because we are gluing this to partially fabric here. So there we go. And I need to cut this off. Okay. And we'll do the same on the back side. And however, I have shown you most of the process. There are a few things that I may, have not shown just because they're unique to my personal style. However, what I have shown you here is still going to get you through what you need to do to make a really nice book. Having our own little tricks to the trade is kind of what makes our individual artwork special, right? So you guys have things that you probably pick up along the way or learn or teach yourselves, and it's just the same for me. And I think that's really true for every artist. So okay. Nice. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I went back to the kit. I was thinking about using this image here for my cover image. So I kind of want to see how this is going to look. So I'm going to start by cutting it down. And since I'm thinking of using it as a cover image, and this is actually a tag, I'm just going to cut the tag portion of it off. Okay. So next, I know that my cover is kind of like dark blue with a little hint of that electric blue, and there is some gold in there. So I want to pick a paper that has sort of like complementing colors. So see this here, this is a scrap that I used, but it's got the really pretty gold foiling in the background. So I do like that already. So I'm gonna cut this down as a little option. And then what else do I have here? Okay, so we've already used those for the cover. I could do white to make it pop, but I think I might just go with one of the lighter colors that are in here. This one. Let's see. So if we do Let's just say. Oh, that's so pretty. Okay. Let's, I'm going to roughen these edges a little. Again, if you do this, please be careful with your scissors. I do have the little distress tool. I don't feel like getting it right now. Okay. So we did that. Now I'm going to go ahead and glue this down. And I am going to be giving it a stitch. This is really pretty. Perfect. And then I will layer this on the back of that. So I'm gonna go ahead and just do it. Just do it. Okay. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Now I'm going to cut the image out. Okay, so I think I'm going to roughen these edges a little again. And the paper that I chose for the backpack layer, it has polka dots on it, but this side is kind of plain for me. So I think I have a little bit of sari silk that matches with this color blue here. And since this is the least color of, this is the least amount of that blue, I think I may do some of that same color sari silk here on the side, and then I'm gonna stitch around this and I'll be right back. Okie dokie. So while I was over there sewing, I found some doily scraps on my desk. So what I just did was I tucked those pieces under the piece that had not been sewn down yet. And then here is the sari silk that I was telling you about. It's really cool because it has all the different tones that are already here. So now, just make sure the book is in the right direction. Oh, it looks so good. I love this. Love this. Wow. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and glue this down. Now, you can glue this down completely, or if you want to, you can just glue down 3 sides and you can make the top a pocket. So I think that would actually be cute. Especially you'll have an extra little something up here, whatever's on the top of your tag. And since there's a lot of like blank space up here, like it's kind of blank here, kind of blank here, plain white here, having a tag with something up there I think would look really cute. So we're gonna do a pocket. So I'm going to go ahead and glue this down. Alrighty, and then we do have we have this little tag here that was also kind of left over from what I just printed out. So let's see if this will fit in there. I can back this because if it's gonna be on the cover, I want it to be a little bit more sturdy. Let's see, we can back it with we have a little scrap here. That should do. So first of all, before I back it, I want to make sure it actually would fit in here. And it does. Okay, so let's go ahead and Okay, so here's the tag. I took this over to my machine and just stitched around it, and then I popped an eyelet in here so that we can put a little of this gray soddy silk in there. And then I just want to tie it in a little bow. And there we have it. So now we can pop this in here, and that is perfect. Okay. Someone, yeah, you know what? That's how I feel too after finishing the book. That is exactly how I feel. Okay, so it's pretty much almost done. There are just still a few more things, like I said, that I'm going to do to the inside to finish it up. And then, I don't know, we'll see if I add any more ephemera in here or not. And then there are a couple more things, like I said, that I do want to add. But aside from that, this book is pretty much done. So the last thing that I will be coming back to do is to share the final flip through of this with you guys. And yeah, somebody will be the new owner of this. And I will have this up in my Etsy shop at that point in time. So someone is going to be the new owner of this, and you got to see pretty much the whole process. So I think that's pretty neat. If you have any questions or comments or anything else that you would like to see, please leave a comment down below in the comment section. And that is going to wrap it up for me for now. Be sure to stay tuned, because you never know what direction this odd flock of ours is heading into. And until next time, toodaloo.